Hello, everyone, and welcome to another brand new spoiler review episode here from the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey! We're jumping into Hawkeye episode 3 Echoes today. This is a spoiler review. A lot of you have been sending us tweets, sending us messages, I'm getting DMs. Where's my Hawkeye spoiler review from the Geek Buddies? Hey, we get busy. Things happen. I was at a Showdown Spectacular this weekend. Mike's busy. Shannon's busy. We're doing it now. Yeah, Mike?
The holidays are no joke. I had too much to do this weekend, and I'm still recovering from it, and I'm not thrilled about it.
What's your excuse,
very
Shannon?
Festive.
What's your excuse, Shannon?
I mean, I had a lot to do as well. I just don't feel the need to whinge about it.
Oh, Jesus. Wow. Well, I appreciated Michael's trips to Disneyland and what have you. It seems like it was a good time and very festive and all of that. I myself retired officially from the Schmodown over the weekend, so I was very busy with all of that and the madness and the drama of all of that. So if any of you who are watching was there or watched it virtually, thank you very much for all the incredible kind words and support. But we are here.
Did you win, Johnny? Are you?
I did not know. I
got
TKO'd, so it was not a good showing for me. But it wasn't about the match. I didn't study that much. It was more about like having one final send off, getting to say what I need to say, having the fans get him, just hearing from them. And it was a great, great time. But, I think it's on to the next generation. And, I'm focusing on the stuff we're doing together and the stuff I'm doing. So it's just, it was a great 7 seasons. It's been doesn't mean I won't come back down the road. But, you never know. Like Clint Barton, I'm a little tired of the superhero business. I'm a little tired of the Schmodown business. I need a little break. So making way for the young blood makes all kinds of sense. But we want to say to all you, as we go into this review episode here, we are sponsored by Carbon Health yet again all this month here on the Outlaw Nation channel and on the Geek Buddies. It's great to have them be a part of us. Got to speak to a couple of those people from Carbon Health over the weekend. They're very happy about all the work we're doing here and supporting Carbon Health on the Geek Buddies, and they love the show. So very nice of them to take the time to tell me that as well. Just remind you all, Carbon Health is a leading national healthcare provider with a mission to bring high-quality healthcare to everyone. Urgent care, primary care, virtual care. They have 90 clinics in 14 states and offer virtual care in 24 states. They believe that everyone deserves good health, and they want to make high-quality healthcare accessible for everyone. So go to their website, www.carbonhealth.com, and see if there's a clinic or a virtual care facility near you that you can use or you have access to if you have any questions about your health. And Michael and Shannon, after this episode, quite a few people might need to call Carbon Health and deal with their health. Don't you think? My Lord.
Bro, what do you mean, bro?
There was a lot going on for sure. But let's jump into it. We're going to break this thing down. This is a spoiler warning. We have one more before we jump into it too deep. But just letting you know, if you have not watched the episode, go and watch the episode and come back and hang out with us. We're going to break this thing down section by section. I think I broke it up into about 4 sections, a 45-minute episode. We're going to break it down, have a full spoiler review discussion about it. But as we do with all these spoiler reviews, Michael, take it away. What did you think overall about this episode here in episode 3 here in the Hawkeye series?
I think this episode was great. I mean, this episode was just a blast from top to bottom. It started, it was nonstop. I feel, I know this because he texted me. I feel like Mr. McClung correctly feels like the action in this episode was better shot than the previous 2. Definitely like some amazing action sequences, top to bottom, amazing introduction of Echo, and most importantly for me is, if I am wrong about who is in this show, I will eat. Like at this point, I feel like we have passed the Mephisto threshold, and we are well into that. Obviously has to be who we all think it is. So that made me really happy. Also, I think that this had one of the coolest moments maybe in any of the Marvel Disney Plus TV series so far that made me squeal like a little fanboy, and it was amazing.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't wait till we get to that moment. Yeah, great point you bring up here, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. If you've seen Law & Order Criminal Intent, if you've seen a few seasons of Daredevil, you know that laugh. You know that smile. Shannon, what did you think overall about this episode?
As unabashed fans of the MCU, sometimes we get dings, sometimes correctly, sometimes not, for being like, oh, the newest thing is always your favorite thing. Like that's just the way it is. I gotta say, this episode of Hawkeye, I won't say it's the best episode of any Disney Plus series, but man, it's up there. This was just so such a blast. You got some really great backstory on Maya. The action, I didn't look to see if it's the same cinematographer. I don't know how the MCU does it when in terms of directors versus cinematographers versus the people that are planning these big sequences. But Bert and Bertie, the directors of this episode, my goodness, that chase was just fantastic. I went back and watched it so many times, and there was just some great character moments between Clint and Kate and between Kazi and Maya. I mean, this is building this. The story is just so intriguing to me right now. And as much as I did like Loki, and I thought Falcon and Winter Soldier had some really good moments, I mean, Hawkeye is catching up to WandaVision right now in terms of my enjoyment level. And I can't wait to talk about this episode.
Yeah, I have to agree with both. I have to agree with what you just said here. Yeah, to me, this episode is on the par with any of the best episodes we've gotten from the MCU Disney Plus series for sure. Really enjoyed the introduction of Echo. Really enjoyed the fight sequences, the action sequences, but the story they were telling about Echo. This idea of living between two worlds, this idea of trying to navigate her life, plus laying the groundwork that yes, she may have started out as a villain, but as we know in the comics, she can become a hero, and maybe that's the path they're laying here as well. The allusions to a certain somebody coming back, but then also getting more deepening of the relationship between Kate and Clint. That great scene near the end at the diner shop, wherever it is, the coffee shop or diner, where they're having that discussion about the price of being a hero. That was a really great moment. So I agree with you. This is a very well directed episode. It is a different cinematographer, Shannon. So you're right here. James Whitaker, he apparently does this episode, then 4 and 5 as well, but did not do 1 and 2. So maybe the combo of Bert and Bertie and James Whitaker kind of bringing out a better approach to this to this episode for overall here in the first 3 episodes of the series. But I will say this feels more like my kind of a series than any of the series that we've gotten so far. So I'm starting to develop a deep connection, a deep love for this. And of course, because I love the Matt Fraction run so much, seeing that element or those elements being a part of this as well has made me excited about the series. It has made me like the series automatically from the jump. So I'm looking forward to jumping into it as well. Let's do that now. This final spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it, go see it, then come back and hit play from this point forward. Okay. As we said, it's called Echoes. Episode 3, it's about 43 minutes long. We start with Maya Lopez as a young girl in class. She is deaf and just looking at her surroundings, trying to read the teacher's lips. She completes her homework like no one's business, though, and gets a nice little smile from the teacher. And then we cut to her playing with her dad, who is played by the great Zahn McClarnon. If you haven't watched Reservation Dogs, watch him in that show. He's great. And Fargo, as well as a super insane kind of hitman villain. He's great in that. He's been in a number of things over the last few years, so great to see him pop in here as her dad. They talk about dragons and if dragons can go between two worlds, and her dad says that dragons would get stronger coming into the human world, which I think is a little bit of symbolism there. She asks about going to school with people like her, but they can't afford it. It's such a beautiful, tender scene between a father and a daughter. He says it will make her stronger to go to this other school, and it would be better for her to learn how to adapt to that and not just rely on being around people who are deaf. She has to learn to jump between two worlds by watching them. And then we cut to her watching these two kids in her karate class. She studies the movements of the kids fighting, then uses it later to kind of to subdue the kid that she was watching fight there. And he looks like this big guy, but she uses her skills and her knowledge and her watching and her attention to detail to subdue him and win that fight. But her dad's giving her this like nice little, you focus, you pay attention here in class, be good with the karate teacher, all of that. And as he walks away, another big guy comes up in screen. We don't see his face. We just see like a leg and an arm. And then we see this hand reach up and pinch the cheek of the young girl and laugh. And that is totally Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. And then we cut to her kind of taking it. We cut to her a little bit older in a ring, taking out a guy. We see she has a prosthetic leg, or at least the bottom leg of hers is prosthetic. We cut to her arriving at Fat Man Auto Repair Shop. Gee, I wonder who owns that. Now she witnesses Ronin laying waste to a crew there. It looks like the early tracksuit mafia, since they're all wearing tracksuits. When she comes in there and she sees Ronin kill her father, they have a tender exchange. He tells her in sign language to fly away from here, little dragon, possibly laying the groundwork that she could be a hero. He doesn't say avenge my death. He doesn't say go get him. He says fly away from here, go be something better, go be something else. And let's stop there. So, Mike, what an intro, what a beginning for a character. And boom, we go right into the Hawkeye title credit. So what did you think about this intro for this character of Echo?
I thought it was great. I mean, we kind of ended last week just getting our first glimpse of her, and we didn't know a lot about her. Like, we didn't really know who she was. So if you're not someone who's really familiar with the comics, you were kind of like, who is this? Is she important? Is she not important? And I think kind of kicking off the episode with this flashback so that we really understand her story and understand where she's coming from was really, really great. Totally agree with you. I mean, I think the whole idea that, she is this deaf child living in a world full of hearing people, and that she wants to go to the deaf school, and clearly her father can't afford to send her there, so he feels bad about it, but kind of turns it around in this will make you stronger, which I think is important for a scene that comes later on, which I thought was really interesting too. So I think kind of setting her up as this person who does live in the two worlds, that is deaf but has used that to her advantage, and then when we see her as an adult just kind of wipe the floor with that guy in the ring, we understand that in that classic comic book sense, the same way that Matt Murdock's blindness gives him heightened senses, Maya Lopez being deaf allows her to see the world and understand the world in a different way, which makes her an absolutely kick-ass fighter. And so I thought they did such a nice job of telling that story in a very succinct, very quick way. So if you are not a hardcore nerd like we are, you're like, okay, I totally get it. But yes, absolutely, when her father is like, uncle will take you home, and then we see this larger than life person, in the comic books, Maya Lopez is more or less raised by Kingpin, who trains her and gives her the best of everything so that she becomes this amazing fighter assassin for him, and tells her that Daredevil killed her father in the comics. So now we kind of take a little bit of that. Clearly, Fat Man is tied to her, and that Uncle, this name of this character named Uncle keeps coming up, and so we see that that's really important. And then I just think that they did a really nice job then of also taking kind of the Ronin story as we know it from the MCU and wrapping that into the story. I think this is where the MCU is their strongest, is because they're really good at taking the most important elements of a story from the comics, but they're also not afraid to weave things together in a new kind of pattern. So we've taken what we knew of Ronin from Endgame, that in in that 5-year period with his family gone and Clint just going down a bad road, kind of took it out on all of the underworld. And we saw him kind of do that with the Yakuza in the movie. And now we're seeing in this that he really did it everywhere, and that New York, he really fucked with organized crime. And so knowing that that is her reason for being angry and upset with Ronin, that her father died after we saw this really touching scene with her and her father when she was a girl, it gives you all the ammo you need. And she becomes I think what they did a really nice job. I was actually watching it with a friend of mine who's not a comic book nerd, who kind of went from, I don't really get who this character is she important, to at the very end of it being like, oh shit, she's a badass, this is amazing. And so that's when you know that they're doing good storytelling, when you instantly get someone who's not a hardcore geek on the exact same level where you are as far as being into the character.
It's a great point, Mike. And, she has a great bunch of points. And she has a Native American ancestry in the comics. That's a little bit, that's why you cast who you cast here as her father. But in the term uncle, and I know this from watching Reservation Dogs, but also getting it confirmed by my girlfriend who's half Native American, it's a term of endearment for elders, uncle and auntie. So using that term of uncle implies not just a familial relation, but also just kind of a respect in terms of the tribe, or in terms of the crew, or in here the Tracksuit Mafia, I guess. But yeah, Shannon, what did you think about this opening for this character of Maya Lopez of Echo here, presenting the relationship, but also that hint of Kingpin and her witnessing her father's death?
I mean, definitely agree with Vogel on all his points. This is what the MCU is very, very good at, is taking the source material and using it to its highest effectiveness for what they're doing, because they are telling their own story. So yeah, I can't one up Vogel when he talks about story. But in terms of performers, I mean, huge props to the casting team, headed up by Sarah Finn and Jason Stamey. One, casting the young Maya. How much young performer named Darnell Bassah, who did a fantastic job, and how well she matched up to Alaqua Cox. And I imagine most of our audience knows this, but Alaqua Cox, she's brand new in terms of performing. I mean, she had no experience. I mean, she lived on a reservation. She worked, I believe they said, at FedEx, and some friends of hers sent her a casting notice where they were looking for a deaf Native American female, and that's how she got this. And you know, watching her performance, you would never guess that this is her first time. I mean, there's just an intensity behind her eyes, and clearly, you know, she made such an impression that she's now going to get her own Disney Plus series. I mean, that's just a huge boon. But yes, I'm also a big Zahn McClarnon fan. Watching him play sort of this more tender role, which if you were introduced to him through Fargo, is a stark difference. But this is also one of the cases of it really pays to watch the episode with the subtitles on, because you get to catch little things that you might not hear. Also, big props to Bert and Birdie for portraying how young Maya perceives being in a classroom with folks that are not like her. I mean, how she's able to catch bits and pieces of lip reading, but if you have a person who is not hearing impaired, like they wouldn't think to look directly at you and speak so the person can read their lips. But yes, I mean, the moment that you saw Uncle with the capital U, it's like, all right, well, this is the guy. And then you hear that, very unique Vincent D'Onofrio chuckle. I was surprised his hand wasn't bigger. That was my only thing. I'm like, okay, that's got to be him. His hand doesn't look huge, but okay, that's got to be him. That's got to be him.
Well, yeah, obviously they're not going to go for what we saw in Into the Spider-Verse. They're going to go with a little more believable approach. But yeah, I dug it too. I think it was a great intro. Got me right into it, and seeing that connection with the father and daughter, so tender to see what it leads to, and seeing the Ronin effect on her too. How's that going to play? Because as Michael pointed out, in the comics, it's Kingpin who kills her father. So are they going to twist? Are we going to think that it's Ronin? And then like later on down the road, when she goes down this path of becoming a hero, do we find out that it was Kingpin who actually set him up to be killed by Ronin? So in essence, indirectly still killing her father. So there's a way they can mess around with that for sure. So can't add more to y'all's points. That was great stuff. Let's move on to the next section here. We're back at the gutted out K&B Toys as the Tracksuit Mafia is watching Hawkeye and Kate ride back and forth on these mechanical hobby horses. I don't know. I think that's what they're called. Kate and Clint have an exchange about how he was going to clear her name till she came through the skylight. And one of the Tracksuit Mafia is apparently flipping out on the phone with his girlfriend, and Kate helps him with his relationship issues. Big Ivan walks up to shut Kate up, and then just as he does, Echo and Kazi show up. Echo cuts Clint loose. Clearly, she doesn't know that he's Ronin. She might have a suspicion, but doesn't know that he's Ronin. And Kazi ends up tying his arms behind him, which was weird to kind of untape him and then tape him back up. There was an interesting decision. They have a debate, Echo and Clint do, about his hearing aid. She says, and this is such an ironic thing, because Clint and Hawkeye get so much crap from the Marvel fans for being like, why is he even in the Avengers? He just shoots arrows. And here she is saying he's relying too much on technology because he uses a hearing aid. So kind of echoing what her father said to her ability to jump between two worlds. Clint explains that he is not Ronin, that Kate is not Ronin, rather, and that she is 9 and spoiled rotten. Glad to see that coming back a little bit. Echo counters him that she can fight and that Ronin might still be back. Clint says he's dead and that Black Widow killed him. Wow. You could make a case in a figurative way. She might have. Echo says she is lying, and Kazi questions Kate, and then Echo chokes her in this moment, which was really shocking and brutal. And also, I enjoyed that they went to that level here in a Disney Plus MCU show here. Chokes her until Kazi pulls her off. Clint whispers to Kate that they will get out of this, then cuts his own tape, runs off, taking all the Mafia with him, leaving Kate with Kazi, and she has time to figure out how to cut the tape, but having all the Mafia around her. Echo and Clint have an awesome fight, and she kicks out his hearing aid and steps on it. Clint jumps through a window, grabs his bow and arrows. Echo grabs Kate's bow, and they battle through the office as Kazi and Kate watch this happening until Clint pins Echo to the wall with 2 arrows there. Then he does a badass move, jumping out into a vat of balls there, shoots an arrow to scar Kazi and free Kate. Kate kicks the crap out of Kazi and some other tracksuit mafia. They escape. Let me just say it real quick, and then we'll talk about the whole action here. Go on an awesome car chase scene. Clint drives, Kate shoots. It's a great sequence. She uses purple blob arrows, explosive arrows, a plunger arrow with multiple hooks, the Yanks Christmas trees, acid arrows, and then eventually Echo catches up with them. Kate's bow is in the car. She shoots purple smoke arrow, gets the bow. They stop on a bridge as a Trust Bro moving company truck barrels towards them. Kate and Clint use the Pym arrow. There's a Pym arrow. And Clint grabs the plunger arrow. They both jump off the bridge, shoot a repelling arrow, land on top of a subway train using the plunger arrow to stay on, then get inside the train and have a funny exchange about her abilities and having to walk Lucky the Pizza Dog. Shannon, action sequence galore here. Take it away.
I will try to be as concise as possible. This is the type of sequence where the synapses in my brain start firing in all different directions. Before we get to the action, I just want to say really interesting parallels between Maya and Kate, that they're both of their destinies are kind of connected to Clint Barton. And Kate is on the light side, that she was inspired watching Hawkeye save people, and Maya's on the other side, that she watched presumably Clint Barton kill her father, and like she doesn't know that connection yet, but just watching how their paths kind of mirror each other, it's really, really interesting. Okay, let me make sure.
And her kind of living between 2 worlds as well. Kate now discovering wanting to live between 2 worlds as well. Yeah.
So the one bro, Peter Adamczyk, who plays Tomas, this guy is so effing funny. And like, there's another moment at the end, but as he's talking about, like, I bought my girlfriend these tickets, just the indignation that he's just spewing out, and he's doing it. So it's so funny, and it is 100% believable. Like, you don't get the sense that this guy is pushing the comedy at all. Like, the funniest stuff is the truth. And that's why he's so funny.
You wonder if there's an issue here between Hailee Steinfeld, who is a recording artist, and Imagine Dragons, or if a little ball busting, maybe they have a little ball, because she's like totally dissing Imagine Dragons. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
When Maya comes out, like you talked about her in cutting his hands free, it's because she saw his hearing aid so he could sign. She cut his arms loose so he could communicate.
I didn't think about that. Okay.
And when he said, he basically is saying, like, he's new, that's when Kazi ties his hands behind his back. Right. I loved the Black Widow inference that, like, she kind of did kill Ronin and brought Clint back. Loved Ivan's Hawkeye, come out and play, nice little callback to the Warriors. And one thing that the series is doing really well is having these real world stakes, but keeping it light as well. Like when you see Clint do that awesome move with the bow, and then he lands in the ball pit, and then you see him move through the like this brightly colored, almost like a dune sandworm. You see him kind of, and watching him take dudes out with this bow. So throughout the MCU, when we see him fire at humans, it's usually some kind of over-the-top arrow. We've rarely seen him take regular folks out with just these arrows. So you're watching him just laying waste to these guys. And it's like, okay, that's right. Hawkeye is a killer. Like, this is what he did, as he said, this is what he did for 20 years. Awesome to get more shots of Kate being a badass, working Kazi. Again, this is where I think the cinematographer really did a good job of making Hailee Steinfeld look as awesome as she could doing the martial arts. Then we get to that chase, which is very similar to a chase with the Matt Fraction comics. It was just a blast. And this, again, I feel like in the MCU, it's been a long time since we've had a good chase. Like the last chase, I feel like the last really good chase we got, I feel like, was in Winter Soldier, when Nick Fury was running from, all the Hydra dudes that we didn't know were Hydra at the time chasing him. So just a blast. Hailee Steinfeld, again, like Alaqua Cox, has this intensity as she gets out of the car And you see just, I mean, again, they were more than likely shooting that on a stage, but just watching this intensity as she's firing these arrows, it was just so, that's what gets you into a story. That's what gets you so emotionally invested in characters. And even though they can't communicate great because of the hearing aid being damaged, the fact that Clint's just like, hey, they both say, if we turn around, it'll be easier because she can maneuver more with her bow. So cool. You get to the bridge, which the Pym arrow, I mean, that's a cheer moment in the theater. I mean,
came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, no idea. No idea that was gonna happen. I mean, you think of like the coolest moments that Clint has had in the MCU. This might one up the Ant-Man moment from Civil War, right? Because as fans, we were all so jonesing to watch someone, whether it be the Atom or Ant-Man, riding Hawkeye or Green Arrow's arrow. Like we just wanted to see that, and the fact that they did it and it looked great. But this was just so awesome. Like you see this enormous arrow come down, and it seems like they've won the day for the moment. Clint knows that they're going to have to jump off because these guys aren't going to stop. And watching with the USB arrow, and this brings me back to Peter Adamczyk as she fires that arrow at Ivan, and as it hits him and bounces off, the reaction. Sorry if that blew out anyone's ears just now, but that was so funny because I feel like we've all had that when we're expecting to get hit and we tense up, to the umpteenth degree and realize it doesn't hurt at all. Watching them kind of swing in as they have a seat on the subway as they're both kind of catching their breath from the battle. I was looking at that. I'm like, that would have been a great promo image for them to have used for the show. Just Kate and Clint tuckered out on this subway. So loved this sequence.
Michael, what did you think? Yeah, and I think the USB arrow is a reference to What If. What did you think about this whole these action sequences, but also some of the character beats and character moments throughout the action sequences as well in these two sections of the show?
Yeah, well, the USB arrow is in What If was a reference to the USB arrow in the original Avengers movie because Hawkeye uses that there. So yes, he has used the when Kate is like, point. Why do you even have a USB arrow? It's like, well, we saw what that USB arrow could do. It's pretty cool in the right situation. On that bridge, not so much. It was all great. I mean, Shannon hits a lot of the beats, and action is definitely his forte. But I think that some of the things I found really interesting is, as far as Echo as a character, I really did like that right off the bat when she saw that hearing aid, she basically is like, you rely too much on technology, you'd be better off without it. And like if you've seen like Sound of Metal with Riz Ahmed, there definitely is like there is a huge part of the deaf community that they don't see being deaf as an issue that needs to be solved for them. Like they are perfectly happy living this life and see a lot of benefits to living as a deaf person and really take a lot of pride in living as a deaf person. And I think that adding that to Echo's character, like this is not something she sees even a little bit as a defect. Like her life, she is living absolutely her best life. And just like her father told her, is very comfortably living in two worlds. And so she kind of looks at someone like Clint who does have that hearing aid, who's kind of holding on to that hearing, is like, why? Which I thought was a really, really interesting, really nice thing. Like you both said, I thought the way he phrased Black Widow killing Ronin and that he was there, I was like, well, he's not technically lying. That is
from a certain point of view.
Which was interesting because also Echo called Kate Bishop out right away when she said something that wasn't 100% true. So the fact that she kind of can like pick up on that, like, I think you're telling the truth or not, like she didn't pick up on it with Clint because he technically wasn't lying. Yeah. I also love just in general with this whole sequence, and I think the reason that whole really, really funny Imagine Dragons bit was in there is I do think it's really neat how they're showing Kate Bishop in certain areas is like, when it's the fun part of being a superhero, hey, look, I connected with the bad guy. We're all people. This is fine. She's like, hey, look, this is cool. And then it's instantly followed up by something really intense happening and really upsetting where she is clearly off her game and Clint has to become that mentor figure for a few minutes and be like, hey, you're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And so again, as we talked about last week, you're constantly taking the fun part of being a superhero and butting it right up against with this is not a great life. Like, this is hard. Like, you are not, this isn't all like fun costumes and banter.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to, like I said, I think they're going to continue doing that. And it really kind of shows the stakes of what this life can do to you, which is a funny line for Marvel to cross, because obviously we want our superheroes to be the coolest, most awesome people in the world.
Right.
But to have Clint sort of be the hero that kind of speaks to that, this isn't all great, I think is really cool and really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. No, go ahead. No
I agree with you, Michael, and that seems to be something they're really focusing on in Phase 4 through the TV shows, through the Marvel shows, but then also, in the most recent TV spots for Spider-Man: No Way Home, this spell that you messed up is causing this, and the Eternal stuff saying, "Oh, bringing all these people back caused this bad stuff to happen." So just it's really seeing the implications and the consequences of these decisions. But sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, and I do think, I mean, just really quickly on that, and we talk about it a lot of the time, and I think this is where, because DC has had their starts and stops, they haven't had the chance to do this there. But what Marvel has done really well is like, you build to a big thing like Infinity War and Endgame. You build to these big moments. You build to Wanda and Vision in WandaVision. And not only do you have a really cool story, but that story has ramifications. And we even saw that in the first episode of Hawkeye. Like, was it good that the Avengers saved New York City? Obviously, it was good that the Avengers saved New York City, but seeing it from young Kate Bishop's point of view, you see the cost that attack actually had on people. And I think Marvel's doing a really good job of taking these things and showing the cost and having it mean there's repercussions to every choice you make, even when you make the right choice. And I think that's just really good storytelling. In addition to all the amazing action, which Shannon covered really well in the absolutely amazing car chase, I really just loved all the character interplay and the joke setups. Like, I loved that you set up this suction cup arrow, which she shoots, and she's like, why the hell would you have a suction cup arrow? Is that to plunge toilets? And then when you get to the end of the sequence and he uses the suction cup arrow to save their asses on the subway, she's like, hey, I get why we have suction cup arrows. Like the setup and landing, you're like, God, that's just good writing. It's so good. The Pym arrow, even though you both covered it, is the part where I squealed. And again, this is where Marvel gets to show off what they've done, because they can have a moment like this and you don't need exposition. You don't need Clint to stop and say, well, my buddy Scott Lang got me this Pym arrow from Hank Pym, and if you remember, he's like, you don't explain it. Like, there's no explanation necessary, because they know that the people that are watching this are the people that have watched the MCU. So we see the word Pym on the air. He tells Kate to shoot the arrow up in the air. We see the word Pym. We automatically go, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And then they deliver on the goods and you have this giant arrow showdown. And like, that is what Marvel does better than anybody right now. Like, that, we know you're along for the ride. We're not going to explain it. We're just going to let this be as cool as it can be.
Yeah.
And then, as Shannon said, I did love that with Kate not focused on trying to impress Clint, and Clint deaf and not able to hear Kate, we actually got to see that they basically are the same person. Like, in the moment in the car where he's like, hey, we should turn around and be easier. And she's like, hey, why don't we turn around and be easier? And she's like, oh, we're communicating. And the fact that they're communicating when he actually can't hear her is hilarious. And then again, when you get into the scene at the end, it was really nice to hear him basically say, yeah, you weren't lying. You are one of the most amazing archers in the world. Like the fact that she was able, like when he was like, hey, take out those 2 traffic lights. Hey, shoot this up right here. That he has someone next to him who he can tell her where the arrow needs to go. And it's a 100% certainty it's going to land there. Him realizing that and telling her that is awesome. And then just the funniness of her being like, we got to walk the dog. And then him being at the end and being like, you know what, we really should walk the dog. Like, you're like, oh yeah, these two he is meant to be her mentor, whether he knows it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great to see their interplay developing step by step through these first 3 episodes. And it works, and it's believable. And he compliments her where he got, like, he at first he grills her about her like overdeveloped sense of confidence, but then he says, you need to rely on this. There's that great moment right before he escapes from being taped up. He says to her, I'm going to need you. This is not the time to be scared. This is the time to focus up. Use that overdeveloped sense of confidence you have because I'm gonna get us out of here, or we're gonna get out of here. And so he knows how to kind of access her tools when necessary, and it leads me to believe this guy is a great dad. He must be a fantastic dad, you know. And we're gonna get to a sequence in just a second here that kind of shows that even more. But later when he initially wants her to drive because he's gonna do the shooting, but it's so symbolic that it's the tracksuit mafia that stops that from happening. Clint has to drive, then she has to shoot, and she's grabbing whatever arrows she can grab. And it's so funny to see Clint go, no, don't use that one, not that one, not that one. So just that little back and forth is so funny because he knows exactly what to allow her to use. And then she's just randomly grabbing what she can grab and uses them where she can use them as she's getting more knowledgeable about how to do this, how to take over. And that whole sequence is essentially a mini version of him handing the torch off to her, as we're going to see down the road in this series, I'm sure. So I love how, as you said with Michael, you said about Marvel, them laying the little seeds that just come to fruition quickly afterwards in a scene or later on in an episode or even in the series. Marvel does such a great job with that throughout, and it's certainly that sequence I thought did a good job of laying the groundwork for what we're going to get overall from this series. All right, so we cut to her aunt's apartment as we go into Clint's world. What he hears when he's barely hearing, because he says to Echo earlier, you know, it's just hard of hearing, not deaf, and so we're hearing what his life is like. And then his son calls. He thinks it's his wife. Kate has come back from walking Lucky, and Kate helps him to respond to what Nathaniel, his son, is saying, talking about whether he's going to be home for Christmas, talking about Christmas movies. It's movie night, talking about being bored. And then his son gives him the gift of saying, it's okay if you're not home for Christmas. I don't know why. I got emotional. I started to cry a little bit, and I had to pause and watch it. There's something about someone understanding the responsibilities you have, especially someone close to you, and creating the space for it to be okay that you're not going to disappoint them, and that it's okay for you to go and do the things that you're doing. And I thought that was damn sweet. And seeing Kate kind of write the messages, it was a great window into her understanding what his world is like, which I thought was great. So we go back to the K&B Toys, and the Tracksuit Mafia is moving out just when they got used to the place. They're moving out, and Kazi and Echo have this conversation. Kazi is trying to stop her going after Ronin, saying Uncle would not be happy. She says if it was her father doing this, would you still be questioning her? And Kazi says Echo's dad always put the crew first. Echo then pulls the who's in charge card, and that's the end of that conversation. And we go back and tells him to go and find more information on Clint Barton. We go back to Kate and Clint with Lucky. She makes a text joke, which is really funny. He should be Hawkeye or not Hawkeye. I thought it was, or that she glad that he isn't Hawkeye or not Hawkeye. Then they wait for this doctor to show up who fixes the hearing aid. And then later they get some food. And Clint initially has his hearing aid turned off as Kate is talking about all they just experienced. And then he turns it on to ask for more coffee, which Kate notices. It doesn't get too angry about it, but certainly is a little bit like miffed about it. But they discuss the price of being a hero and the things you will lose forever. Clint really, I think this is some great great acting work from Jeremy Renner in these small moments, talking about the things you're going to lose. You can hear the weight of Black Widow's death. You can hear the weight of losing his family and his kids possibly because of the blip. You can hear all of that and what it can do to you. And he's trying to essentially convey that in those two lines. She responds back a little glibly, as a young person would who hasn't experienced this. Well, you also get trick arrows and cool costumes, which leads her into doing some conversation about branding issues, and says he needs a new costume. And the costume is essentially the costume from the comics, which she uses as kind of a segue into conversation about Ronin. She wants to know who Ronin is, but Clint won't tell her. Clint gives her 3 reasons why, and we can talk about that as we get deeper in. Kate counters that one of the reasons is that he's not a role model, and Kate counters that he is a role model because of what he did to help her. Kate then names the dog. We cut to them walking together, discussing the Tracksuit Mafia. Clint says there's a guy at the top who will do anything to grow the operation, and that he's mad at Ronin because Ronin hit the suppliers on both sides of his operation and hit the tracksuit upper management, which may be referencing what happened earlier in the episode with Echo discovering her father dying. They discuss the fact that weird shit from the Avengers compound could be out there and how uncomfortable Clint is about that. Love the joke about Jack. They start talking about Jack and her mom's relationship. Kate then tells Clint that they can hack into her mom's computer since she runs a security company, and to get info on Jack and the Tracksuit Mafia. They go to her mom's house. She makes a reference that her great-great-great-great-grandfather built the building. As she hacks into her mom's computer, Clint walks around the place, makes a funny joke about I'm in the wrong business, which might be a little even funnier joke because Jeremy Renner used to flip houses. So, I mean, this is kind of maybe even a kind of a real world meta joke he's making here. And he's confronted by his own Ronin sword to his neck, now being wielded by Jack Duquesne. All right, Michael, what a way to end this episode, but also to get a little window into the Kazi and Echo relationship, the importance of her getting to Ronin, but also hearing more about the tracksuit mafia and this conversation about what the price of being a hero. What do you think about
Yeah,
it?
I mean, so first of all, the scene with Clint talking to his son on the phone with Kate sort of writing everything out was... Yeah, it's super emotional. I think to your point, a lot of times I think when people are like writing story or writers, you think that you need to have that thing where you want the kid to be like, I'm really going to be disappointed if you don't come home for Christmas. And really the kid saying it's okay if you don't is more heartbreaking for Clint because you're right, it does mean that they understand, but beyond that it means a part of them doesn't expect it.
Yeah.
Like a part of like
this
point, is a family. This is a family that's kind of used to Clint putting the job first because he's saving the world. And sure, you know that dad is saving the world, but also you've come to expect that he's not going to be around when he says he will, and that hits harder. Yeah. And then I think for me, what makes the scene so emotional is that Kate, is a little bit self-absorbed, not in a horrible way, but like she's really focused on her life. And I think this is the first moment that she understands what Clint has lost or what Clint has had to put aside to be with her. And in addition, just seeing Clint kind of struggling with not being able to hear, like, it's just a triple whammy. You've got a disappointed kid whose dad's not going to be home on Christmas, a father who's dealing with like kind of a newer disability in his life, having a real challenge communicating with this son, and then this other girl who is there to do the translation. And as it's happening is like, fuck, this is because of me. Yeah. If I didn't do what I had done, this guy would be at home with his kid right now, and this is my fault. Yeah. And so it really is like a triple whammy of an emotional scene. The Maya Kazi scene, really, really interesting. At this point, I'm just like, just put a neon sign that says Kingpin, Kingpin, Kingpin above everything, which they kind of pretty much are. But yeah, they're talking around it a lot, but like we said last week, between all the people, Jack, Kate's mom, Maya, the tracksuit mafia, everyone is part of organized crime seemingly, and everybody is reporting to this one person, and this is the person that Ronin really, really pissed off, and that's the important information we're getting, in addition to knowing that Maya is like dead set on like this Ronin thing in a way that others are not. So I thought that was really good. And then the scene in the restaurant, really just a great scene. I think what's really interesting about it is that Clint, prior to the whole action sequence, was pretty much like, look, you're a spoiled rich kid. You don't really, this isn't your life. Right. Like, I'm going to set you straight, and then you need to go as far away from this as possible. But he's shifted in this scene. This scene has shifted to, you've got to really weigh this out if you want to do it, because you have to make sacrifices. And I think it kind of shows that after seeing what Kate could do, he recognizes that this is a road that she can go down. Like he now sees her in a different way, and he's like, you're kind of on my level as an archer, and that's really saying something. So you could do this, but you need to understand what's at stake. Showing that Hawkeye costume, and that was like, you're like, that's really funny, and B, you're like, man, some comic book superhero costumes are dumb. like Marvel, when Marvel decides to go comic books accurate with the costumes, they always nail it. You're like, they really did a good job of making that look like exactly what I wanted it to look like. But sometimes when they choose not to, it's the right choice. And I think this was one of those times. But I do love him being like, look, here's the 3 reasons. 1, my wife would divorce me. Yeah. 2, I was supposed to be in the shadows. And 3, I'm not a role model. And like, I think that what I love about this whole role model conversation is that given what he did as Ronin, given the life he led prior to S.H.I.E.L.D., during S.H.I.E.L.D., the things he's done, the people he's killed, he really and truly believes he's not a role model. And there's a good case to be made. Like, he's done some fucked up things. But at the same time, if you've been watching this series, the MCU, and you see the way he was with Wanda. You see how Quicksilver's death affected him. You see him with his family. You see all these moments. And then in addition to seeing all this stuff with Kate, and you're like, you are absolutely, I mean, you know, in Age of Ultron, which as we've all discussed, not perfect, but when it's Laura's his wife's name, right? When Laura says to him, you know, something about him hanging out with all of these larger than life heroes who are really screwed up, and he's like, yeah, they don't need me, and she's like, no, I think they really do need you. Like this idea that sort of was laid out in Age of Ultron, that Clint is sort of this grounding force that kind of keeps everybody grounded, you know, and a little bit like their feet on the ground when you have these characters that are larger than life. And then to see that carry through in the way he mentors all of these people, including Kate, he is a mentor, even though he doesn't think it is. And I think it's great.
Yeah. I think you made an excellent point, Mike, that I didn't catch this idea that he's kind of come around to accepting her as an equal, as a partner here, because she even says in the diner scene, she says like, we're in this together. Right. And on walking out in the park, she says that they're coming after both of us. There's no separation here because we're connected through the suit. And so now that he's accepted her, there's maybe even Clint glimpses the possibility of walking away from this life and leaving it for her to take over, and he can go and be back with Linda and like build that you know, just go back home and be there for Christmas for his kids, be there for Nathaniel, all of that. So maybe that's a part of it working underneath all of this as well. Shannon, what did you think about this whole sequence, these scenes here leading us to the Jack Duquesne sword to the neck, the Ronin sword to the neck?
Well, before I go back to the beginning of it, I kind of want to piggyback off of something, what you were just saying, John. And like, I hadn't thought about it. But I think it was you were talking about last week, how Jeremy Renner has said in the media, like he would like to stick around if possible. And maybe the idea of him leading up sort of like the West Coast Avengers, like a chapter of the Avengers. And now seeing the way he does connect with younger individuals like Wanda, like Kate, like, God, that would make a lot of sense that you would have him sort of in the Nick Fury role of guiding this team of young heroes. I have no idea if that's what they're going to do. They clearly are not suffering for a lack of material. But that would be a really interesting way for Clint Barton to stick around in the MCU. Like you get to put him, you know, almost like a director of S.H.I.E.L.D. type role.
He's a damn good actor. Why not give him more to do? Yeah.
Well, and I mean, well, I was going to say this. We talk a lot about West Coast Avengers just because that's something from the comics. But I don't know that is something that, I mean, they just got such a packed slate. But I do agree with you in that, you know, in the Young Avengers storyline, basically the Young Avengers come together, Cap and Tony show up, and they're like, absolutely not. Like, you are not doing this. And Hawkeye's one of the ones that's like, they're going to do it. Like, we're not going to stop them. They're going to do it. It's going to be what it's going to be. And having Clint stick around, if they are, in fact, putting together these younger heroes, and having him kind of step into that role is like, look, somebody's got to tell you guys what to do or you're going to kill yourself. So, all right. That would be different. Again, different from what's in the comics.
Right.
But very much in the spirit of the comics and fitting into what they've built in the MCU. So I could definitely see something like that.
That's a great point. Yeah, because there's no Tony and Cap's gone. So, you know, that makes sense. Yeah.
Putting him in charge of a group of some superpowered younger heroes. I think that sounds like a really, really cool story.
There's actually, and I think I've mentioned this before really quickly just because now you've got my brain working, but like even in the comics currently, there's a law in the Marvel comics called Kamala's Law because of Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, that is all about outlawing young superheroes that below a certain age you can't be running around being a superhero because it's child endangerment. It's a lot of stuff, and I could see them taking that and looping it in. Like there's a lot of material that they could pull from, but that's for later down the road. Shannon, keep going on.
Sorry, now you got my brain going.
Don't tell Jack. Don't tell Jack. Anyway, good. Yeah.
Thinking post Secret Invasion, if they do something similar to where the heroes are replaced by sort of a rogue faction of Skrulls, and they need people to step up, and it's going to be these younger heroes who have just started to emerge. That might be cool.
Yeah. Why not?
But back to Hawkeye.
Yes.
So, yes, the scene with Kate basically translating for Clint, I'm with you, John. Super emotional. Yeah. That hesitation that Nate had before he said, it's okay. It's that. It's in so many Christmas movies and so many holiday movies about, you have to make it back in time for this. And you get that sort of begrudging acceptance for the individual who's affected, that they're not going to make it home. And there's no sense in yelling at you, especially because, Nate's a child. But it's like, it's okay, Dad. And then going to, again, I just love the parallels, the Kate Maya parallels about missing the father and finding this surrogate father, and how Kate found Clint and Maya found Wilson Fisk, we assume. And then watching her, and like, we haven't really seen, this is the first episode that we really got some more of, is it Fra Fee? Is that how you pronounce the actor's name?
Fra Fee, yeah.
Kazi. And they did such a good job casting all these tracksuit mafia guys. I mean, again, the guys playing Yvonne and Thomas, so funny. But then you get the...
Who's Yvonne? It's Ivan. Are we doing this again?
That's how they would say it in the show. They would say
Michael, where do you start? Are you an Yvonne or Ivan? Which is the way you go?
How do they say his name in Rocky IV?
Ivan Drago.
No. How does his wife say it?
Well,
Yvonne.
All right, fine.
You just saw the extended version of Rocky IV. I'm sure they said it more.
It's not extended, let me tell you, but go ahead. It's cut down. All right. Anyway, sorry.
But the depth that you get with Kazi, like, you get this guy that does have sort of that, almost like an honor amongst thieves. Like, you get some emotional depth from him, saying, trying to connect with Maya, like, your dad put the crew first. Right. Like, he's looking out for the well-being of this sort of dysfunctional family that they've established. So it'll be really interesting to see if his character goes the comic book route. I'm kind of doubting for this series, but he eventually becomes kind of clown, and that's a terrifying, disturbed character. But then going over, and like the good thing they don't call you Hockey, or I was like, oh, perfect, solid dad joke. Slow clap. But then, yes, also that diner scene where she shows him the classic costume. Now, this is not something that I saw. Our buddy Eddie Lou texted me, and it was a picture of the classic Hawkeye costume that apparently was in the LARP scene in episode 2, which I didn't see. Looking at it, I mean, yeah, if you Google it, like, it's up. And it. Yes, it does not look good in real world. It looks great for the LARP scene, but if they were to have tried to have done that for a comics accurate costume for the MCU in general, it probably wouldn't have turned out well. My girlfriend and I were I was watching the episode again, and she looked at the drawing. She's like, "Is that what it really looks like?" So I, pulled it up on my phone. And she's like, "What's with the pirate boots?" And I'm like, "Yeah, a lot of Marvel guys, a lot of Marvel heroes have pirate boots."
He's a swashbuckling guy, for God's sake. You know what? I want the camera in the nursing home where the guy who designed that costume spits out his pudding because he's watching this episode going, "Don't make fun of the costume I created. It was 1940-something or 1950-something, for God's sake." Anyway, I hope they get the approval from the people who create these costumes before they make fun of these costumes, or at least let them know. I mean, no one seemed to complain about it when we were buying these comics. I don't know.
We didn't know what we wanted in the 60s. It was a different time.
Oh, who's the we stuff? Anyway, all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, you.
Don't make me do it. Go ahead.
Please don't. But then getting to the penthouse and watching how, when Kate pulls up who Kazi works for, that Sloan Limited. So there's a character from Daredevil named Jason Sloan, who was part of a law firm that Matt Murdock used to work for. Right. So, and like, there were a couple other names on there. Like, I took a picture of it. I'm like, I need to Google all these names, and I didn't get to it. But the connections to Daredevil are becoming more and more clear. And what a great end. I can't wait to see how this Jack Duquesne fight is going to go in the penthouse.
Yeah. This is it, but it seems very clear that there is no previous relationship. It seems like between Jack Duquesne, unless he's got another name that he was under. So I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Do you think or Shannon? Do you think we're in it?
I don't think they'll be connected, but I think it's just going to be a good fight.
Okay.
Like I said, just even getting into age-wise, I mean, like in the comics, Jack Duquesne was a bit older, so that he was training a little bit of a younger Hawkeye. Like, that was part, and like, these guys are so. I just don't think it makes sense. And I mean, I could be wrong, but I would be surprised if they did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as far as like the, look, I mean, we'll probably talk about this later this week on Geek Buddies, but especially now that Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock in the MCU has all but been guaranteed because of Kevin Feige. I mean, he's basically said that if we see Daredevil in the MCU, it's going to be Charlie Cox. So we know that they're taking, at least out of all the Netflix series, at least the Daredevil universe is kind of moving in and being absorbed into it. So with that and the Sloan Limited and all of the Uncle references and knowing the past of Maya Lopez, I mean, if we get Mephisto this time, I'm gonna be shocked. But if all of a sudden they reveal Uncle and it's like, Ian McKellen or like I don't know who else it would be, but I'd be shocked. But yeah, so I think in addition to agreeing with you guys were saying at the top of the episode about Hawkeye really kind of turning into probably one of the better of all the Marvel Disney Plus series, and I've generally liked all of them. I've really enjoyed each of them, some more than others, but Hawkeye really shaping up to be the best. This also kind of being the way to bring in some of that, because as we said, this is much more of the grounded sort of street level part of the MCU. Yeah. And so using that to sort of bring in some of the elements of the Daredevil universe like Kingpin, I think is really, really smart as well.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, all of it is just kind of slowly gelling. But after the first two episodes, they had to lay the groundwork in the first episode, and now we've been speeding through these moments, and they're making them work really well. This was 43 minutes. I think it's the shortest episode of the first three, yet there was so much in here that fit, and we were given, and we've got now a good idea of what we're going to be seeing in these next three episodes. We just crossed the halfway mark. That's kind of crazy that we're 3 episodes away from the end of this series. It's kind of nuts because I think all three of us are enjoying it very much, especially after this episode. All right, any final words here before we wrap up this spoiler review episode of Episode 3 Echoes? Did we just give them?
No, I'll just.
Okay,
I always have more words. Have you met me? No, I just wanted to say I was thinking about this as I watched the episode, and I think I mentioned this a few weeks back, but I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine where he was saying that he felt like the MCU didn't have that much left in them just because they've kind of already cycled through all the big heroes that people care about, Cap, Iron Man, Hulk, whoever. And just watching the way that they're using Hawkeye to sort of build out Kate Bishop, to introduce Kingpin, to look at what WandaVision did with Billy and Tommy, just to look at all of these elements coming in, knowing that Miss Marvel's coming. It's like, I really do love that they are introducing this next generation of heroes to people who aren't as familiar with them from the comics in a way that that I'm seeing my non-comic book friends get really invested. Like, I have so many people who are not nerds who know that I'm a nerd because we do this every week, who are texting me, asking me everything about Kate Bishop right now. Right. And they're the same friends that texted me during WandaVision, and they were like, so wait, who are their kids? Like, who are Billy and Tommy? Like, they're from the comics? Like, what happens to them? And so watching this excitement build over this next generation of heroes, it kind of just makes me super envious of, like, really, really, really good storytelling.
Yeah. Shannon?
Yeah, I base, because more than likely, if a Marvel product or any comic book based product doesn't turn out great, I do give it a little more grace just because I like the medium. I want to see it continue. Sure. But watching this, like, I try to force my girlfriend to watch everything MCU with me. Couldn't get her onto WandaVision because she just didn't get the relationship. She was in for about half of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and she's just like, yeah, I can't stick with it. Got her about halfway into Loki. She couldn't stick with it. Hawkeye, she's actually enjoying. Like, she watching, because she's a big Ant-Man fan. She loves the Ant-Man movies. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to find a sort of film, something that's close in tone to one of the films, I think the Ant-Man series is very close to Hawkeye, in that you do have real world stakes, but you also have this levity about it. And watching, and again, this is why I like to see Marvel movies repeatedly in the theaters. Like, I like to see it opening night or at a screening with you guys, and then I'll buy a ticket the next day for a matinee by myself. And like, I want to see the movie again, obviously, but I just want to listen to a crowd discover things and see if they discover things that I'd like. It's just such a communal experience, and that's what I really love about the MCU.
Absolutely. Agreed. And two quick ones in terms of Easter eggs here. Also on the list was T. Cadlick, who could be the Inhuman known as the Seeker. We might be opening that door. And then S. Killian was on that list. Is that a reference to Aldrich Killian? We don't know, but certainly there's something else to explain. That's what I like about Marvel as well. Echo everything you two just said as well, but also throw in the fact that they love to throw these little things that if you're a comic books person or if you run a website, it's great to find these little Easter eggs that some of them work out and some of them don't, but it's still fun to have that kind of element through it. They did that in Spider-Verse. That is a, kind of a Marvel Sony, not a MCU, but Marvel Sony thing. And having him look through his phone, those names were some of the artists or people who'd worked on Spider-Man stuff before. So it's a great little kind of homage and shout out to them as well. Yeah, I'm loving this series. I agree with Shani. I get it. Maybe she doesn't like that android love. I totally get it. But I or synthetic love. But I'm a massive fan of what's happening here in Hawkeye, and I'm not surprised that some people are giving it more of a chance here because it's a ground-based, a street-level approach to it, and it works really well. And there's some really great acting and some good story beats being developed here and some fantastic action sequences we just saw in this episode. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for watching or listening to this review episode. Don't forget, we are in podcast form as well. And Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at Geek_Buddies, on Instagram at _Geek_Buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is at MK2, and if you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Hey, if android love is your thing, or multiverses, or just street level superheroes, we got a little bit of all of it right here at the Geek Buddies. And if you would like to help us keep doing what we're doing, here's what you can do. Hit the like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page over there, check out all the amazing content he has on his page, leave us some comments below, let us know what you thought of the third episode of Hawkeye. Did we miss anything? Did we hit anything? Were we incorrect about anything? Let us know below. We will definitely check it out. If you are listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that podcasts are available, leave us some stars and some comments there. It helps us go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your social, send it to your friends, and tell everybody how much fun you had chilling with your buddies.
There you go. Speaking of buddies, we want to thank our buddies over at Carbon Healthcare. Thank you so much for being a part of supporting us here on the Geek Buddies and on the Outlaw Nation show, sponsoring the channel for the next couple of months here. Thank you very much. Carbon Health, just to let you know here, they are a leading national healthcare provider with a mission to bring high-quality healthcare to everyone. Urgent care, primary care, virtual care. They have 90 clinics in 14 states and offer virtual care in 24 states, believing that everyone deserves good health, even my friends here on the show, especially my friends here on the show. High-quality health care.
I'm going to tell you right now, if the next couple weekends of holiday parties or anything like this past weekend of holiday parties was, I'm going to need some Carbon Health real soon, real fast.
Yeah,
I gotta make it.
I'm telling you this. We had an expo for the Schmodown Spectacular, and there were a lot of people without masks that I was talking to with my mask down. I may have gotten the Omicron variant, so I may need to take a look at this. But even though I'm a triple boosted, I may need some help from Carbon Health as well. Shannon, any health issues you might be accessing Carbon Health for?
No, I am fit as a fiddle. But when I'm not feeling as fit, I will go to Carbon Health.
carbonhealth.com. That's where you need to go. All right. Thank you all so much for watching this spoiler review of Hawkeye Episode 3. Episode 4, as we're recording this, Episode 4 is tomorrow night at midnight. We'll be back with a spoiler review, hopefully a little bit later on this week for you all to enjoy. And thank you so much for joining us here for another spoiler review episode of Hawkeye here on the
Geek
Buddies.